This dog is rescuing a little boy from drowning. He unzips the boy's clothes without panic. After finding the location of the heart, the dog raises his front paws high, pressing hard on the boy's chest. Seeing that the boy did not respond at all, he pressed his ear against the boy's chest. Fortunately, there was still a little bit of faint breathing. The dog thought for a moment and then he looked at the broken bridge over the river. Then he came up with a good idea. The dog climbs up to the Z height of the steps. He dashes down at a speed of 120 yards, and leaps, and landed exactly on the little boy's heart. The boy woke up from his coma with his mouth full of river water, but his body was too weak to see the dog's face. Again fell asleep. When the boy woke up he found himself naked, clothes hanging neatly next to him. Just as he was about to put on his clothes, a dog barking caught his attention. The boy knelt down and waved to the dog. The dog came towards him with its tail in the air. The boy learned from the tag. The dog's name was Bingo. In order to repay Bingo for saving his life, they became sworn brothers. Bingo was happy to catch fish from the river to celebrate. The boy knew that his family did not like the dog. He quietly took Bingo home through the back door. Halfway home, Bingo saw the neighbor's Teddy. He was captivated by Teddy's beauty. The boy forced to take Bingo home. I didn't expect Bingo to be so smart. No one taught him how to scoot. He attracted the attention of the passers-by. The boy came to the library. Bingo was alone with his books. He seemed to have found in the book the way to woo the little Teddy. The boy took it to the game room. I did not expect Bingo was also an old driver. The first-class technical performance attracted a large crowd of spectators. Bingo also hides naughtily, deliberately let the boy cannot find it, until the boy searched every corner. Only then did it stick its head out of the paint bucket. The boy angrily scolded the Bingo, because Bingo was his only friend. He was afraid that he had lost the Bingo. The Bingo understood the boy very well. He was lying on the bucket as if he was saying, "I was wrong. I won't do it again." When the boy returned home, he learned that his father had to move to another place for work. At night he quietly drilled the wooden box out of the air hole. He was going to take the Bingo with him quietly, but Bingo missed the Teddy next door too much. He quietly ran out of the window while the boy was asleep. Teddy heard the sound and went out to check. He saw Bingo with a rose in his mouth and red wine in his hand. Teddy seemed to be looking forward to the scene for a long time. He invited Bingo into his cottage. The next day the boy and his family were packing their bags to leave. The boy lost Bingo and looked around. At this moment, Bingo was in Teddy's house. It seemed to have forgotten everything. He came out of the house drunkenly. When he heard the car start, he came running, but the car had already driven away. Bingo rushed after him. When he reached a fork in the road, the boy and his family had disappeared. Bingo stayed in the middle of the road. He believed the boy would come back for him. Bingo caused a lot of traffic jams as a result. The dog was picked up by the traffic police and smelled the smell of alcohol. He drew a twisted straight line at the dog. The dog was trying to prove that he was not drunk. He raised his front paws high and walked upright. He also made it more difficult for himself. Despite the dog's perfect performance, but he was still ticketed by the traffic police. The dog had no time to complain. He was in a hurry to find his little master. The dog came to the side of the stake. He smelled his master's urine. He was so excited that he kept racing along the road. He didn't know how long he had been walking. The temperature of the ground kept rising. The dog seems to see his little master, waving at him from the front, but he couldn't walk anymore. The dog fell asleep on the ground. A kind-hearted man came to pick up the dog. The dog wagged its tail. He kept thanking the man for taking him to the slaughterhouse. He was put into a metal cage. The dog saw the room full of dog sausages, next to a pile of wooden boxes, filled with dogs to be made into sausages. They each took out their makeup mirrors, curious to look at the newly arrived dogs. The dogs are not afraid. Instead, it began to implement the escape plan. He kept digging holes in the ground with his paws. The partner next to him uses the mirror to help keep watch. The butcher just walked in. They made a signal sound. The dog rushed to cover the hole with a blanket. The butcher approaches with a large knife. His footsteps stopped next to the dog, but his target was the little one in the top bunk. Suddenly there are screams from outside. The butcher rushes out to check. The dog took the opportunity to get out of the hole he had dug in advance. He let his buddies go. The butcher's family heard the sound and rushed out to check, but it was too late. They were already surrounded by the dogs. The butcher was forced to throw up his hands and surrender. The dog puts the butcher's family in a cage. He was in the front. He took the wheel and the dogs pushed behind him. The dogs took the opportunity to jump out of the cab. The butcher's family is punished. The dogs are walking together on the road to freedom, but the dog stops in his tracks, because he was going to look for his little master. Although he was sad to see everyone go, he raised his hand to say goodbye. The friends respect the dog's decision. The dog went on his way alone. At night, He was hungry and looked for food in the garbage. A man saw the dog and brought him home. The dog thought he had met a kind person. He saw a family of 4 tied up in a cupboard. The dog realized that he had fallen into a gangster's den. At night he secretly called the police, but the police officer who answered the phone did not understand dog language. The dog was very anxious. The police officer called his colleague. The dog tapped the phone rhythmically. The police officer used a pen to record the numbers. The dog took advantage of the robbers were still awake. It quietly released the hostage, but the little girl shut the door with her hand and alerted the robbers. Dogs viciously pounce on robbers for the little girl to buy more time to escape. At this time the police arrived in time. The gangster hugged the dog as a hostage in a hurry. The police did not care about the existence of the dog. Instead, they shot the dog directly. The gangster was forced to surrender. The dog was rescued. The girl's family repays the dog for saving their lives. The dog was allowed to live a rich life, but it didn't last long and the dog was taken to court. He received a summons from the court. The dog could not defend itself. The dog lost his mind when he saw the arrogance of the other side. He jumped on the table in anger, barking at the thug, until the judge's hammer sounded. Only then did the dog regain his senses. He returned to his original position. However, the other side of the crowd of lawyers and still have a strong voice. They also brought in a 10th grade dog language expert. The dog was forced to sign the papers. He was sent to jail for wrongdoing. The dog was reluctant. He kept digging holes in the cell. With the help of his cellmates, he prepared to escape. They got out from the other side of the hole. The cellmate bends down to make a cushion. The dog leaps over the wall with the help of his cellmate's strength. He then used the rope prepared in advance, pulled the prisoner up. They escaped from death together. The dog is determined to find his little master. He and his cellmate went their separate ways. The dog crossed the mountain and the alley. He finally found his little master's house. When the dog saw his little master, he ran excitedly to hug his little master, but the dog suddenly stopped in its tracks. He saw that the owner was holding a long-haired dog. The dog kept backing up. He hid quietly under a tree. The dog was very sad. He left in silence. But what the dog didn't know was, the little boy was walking the dog for the neighbor's family. When the dog was returned, the boy said, "He used to have such a good dog too. Now I don't know where it is." The dog came to the lake at sunset. He felt especially desolate. After a few days of running around, the dog was very hungry. He came to the front of the restaurant. The dog looked through the glass. He wanted to ask the owner to give him the rest of the food, but the owner didn't pay any attention to him. The dog had to go to the garbage to look for it. Fortunately, a chef found him. He found a job for the dog that would fill his belly and help the restaurant lick up the plates. That day the dog just left the house. The dog was caught by 2 thugs around his neck. This scene was seen by the young owner. He called out to the thugs. He increased the power of his bike, quickly pounced on the 2 criminals, for the dog to buy time to escape. But the boy's hands were too strong to fight against the 4 sides. He was forced to take the car by the criminals. The dog broke free from its restraints and rushed after him. The dog lurked on the roof of the car. The young master was tied up in a warehouse. The dog found him through the window. He was not noticed by the robbers. He sneaked in through a hole in the ground. The dog took the little master's hat out. He found the owner's brother. The dog made a kidnapping gesture, but the brother did not understand what he meant. The brother handed the hat to the mother. The mother realized that her little son was in trouble. At that moment, the robbers found the little boy's hat. Shoes disappeared into thin air. They looked around. The dog realizes that he will soon be discovered. He deliberately threw the shoes on the ground. The thug's attention was drawn to him. The dog was ready to fight, quickly pounced on the criminals and fought with them. But the dog's hands were no match for the 4 sides. He was tied to the little master. The criminals threw the cigarette butt on the ground in anger. They put the bomb inside the box. The cigarette ignited the flame. At that moment the police arrived. It was the mother who called the police in time. The criminals saw the car and rushed to escape. The police thought the hostages were in the car and went after them. They did not know that the warehouse had been set on fire. The dog rushed to bite the rope friction rescue little master. In the dog's continuous efforts to finally break the rope, but the flames grew bigger and bigger. The young owner rushed to tell the dog to ring the alarm, but the dog saw the fire has a psychological shadow. The alarm is right in front of him, but he is afraid to step out. Seeing the little master's life is at stake, the dog took a few steps backward, bravely leaping forward through the fire, quickly pressed the alarm. At this time the robbers were still running away. A large number of police cars stopped him. The thug was holding a time bomb remote control as a lifeline. Firefighters came in time to save the little boy, but there were time bombs around them. The firefighters could not tell for a while which box the bomb was in. The dog smelled the smell. He picked up the box and ran out. The dog just jumped into the lake when there was an explosion.